Welcome to Networking Unleashed, Building Profitable Connections, the podcast where we explore the art and science of building powerful relationships that drive real business results. I'm your host, Michael, and today we're diving deep into the intersection of networking, motivation, and communication, especially as it relates to immigrant experience. Our guest is a dynamic expert whose journey spans overcoming barriers, motivating others, and mastering the nuances of cross cultural communication. Whether you're new to networking or a seasoned pro, you'll discover actionable insights to foster authentic connections and unlock new opportunities. So get ready to be inspired as we uncover practical strategies for building networks that are not just expansive, but truly profitable and meaningful. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce Andy Semotiuk. Semotiuk.
I'm a Chuck,
Uh,
right?
Semotiuk. Okay, I'm almost there. Almost there.
No problem. Yeah,
He does have this vast background, but Andy, I would like to introduce you and tell us a little bit about your background.
sure. Well, I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and raised half in Canada and half in the United States. For example, school-wise, I was going initially in Canada, but later in high school, I went to school in Los Angeles. And that's because my mother had a sister who lived in Los Angeles, and they bicycled me back and forth. So, for example, summers I spent in Los Angeles, but during the school year, I spent up in Edmonton in the cold. And then as time went on, as it turned out, my whole life was like that. Half of my time was in Canada and half of my time in the United States. So, for example, although I studied in Canada at UBC in Vancouver, got my law degree and so on, I actually practiced for 10 years in Los Angeles. I practiced for 5 years in New York, and I am now practicing in Toronto, in Ontario, Canada.
Oh, that's great. That's quite an expansive background you have there. So that's good. All right. So I'm going to jump right into the questions that I've developed for you. And hopefully we've made the mark. We've hit the mark. What role has networking played in your own journey as an immigrant, and how did it shape your success?
That's a great question, and you don't even realize how good a question that is, I think, and I'll tell you why. For 3 years, when I was in Los Angeles, I was chairperson of the Beverly Hills Bar Association Networking Committee. And during those 3 years, we had monthly meetings where I had to get things going and get people networking. And I had a philosophy that I espoused during those meetings. And the meetings went like this. After everybody got settled, they picked up some drinks or whatever and spoke to some people. I would call the meeting to order, and we're all standing around. And I would say, I'm Andy Semotiuk, and I'm chairman of the Beverly Hills Bar Association Networking Committee, and I want to welcome you. And I'd like to express a philosophy of networking that I'm hoping you will like and perhaps adapt in your networking efforts. And that philosophy comes from one of the great speakers in the United States, a guy named Zig Ziglar, who
Oh, I
used to,
follow him. Absolutely.
you probably know him, yeah.
Yes, I do. I follow him extensively.
Okay, so he used to say, you can get anything in life that you want so long as you help enough other people get what they want. And I believe that's a great philosophical approach to networking. And I would say to the people there, focus on the people you're dealing with. See if there's anything you can do to help them and see how that in turn comes around to help you. And I'd often share a story or a joke just to liven things up, and then set them loose to doing the networking. But there were a few things about networking that I sort of picked up. And I was an immigrant there because I was born in Canada. That's why it's special that you asked that question. So as an quote unquote immigrant to the United States, I myself had to employ my networking skills to make a go of me as a U.S. immigration attorney in Los Angeles. And here are some of the tactics that I employed to advance my cause. I learned, now, all of this stuff, it's hard to come up with a unique idea, original idea. A lot of our ideas are borrowed from other people or developed from other people's ideas. Certainly that's the case with me. I can't claim originality to everything I'm talking about. That's mission impossible for me. But one of the thoughts that did me well in my networking efforts, and I'm so glad that your program is about networking. It's a real treat for me to be on your program and talk about networking and
Glad.
also about motivation that we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
A few little tips. Number one, I learned long ago that in terms of networking, it's very handy if you're a newcomer to come early to meetings. Vince Lombardi, the great coach of the Green Bay Packers, used to say, if you're 10 minutes early, that means you're 15 minutes late to his players. What he was saying was, of course, come early. Don't come just on time, come early. It's always helpful to come early. And in networking, that's especially true because if you're early, as people come into the room, they have nobody to really deal with except you if you're standing there smiling and looking to say something.
That's true. I'm a military guy, Air Force, and we had one saying that if you're on time, you're late. If you're early, you're on time.
Yeah, that's great. Love it.
And I lived my life that way. My poor children who had to grow up with that, now they're doing it. So
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Zig Ziglar was the best, and that's what's called a servant's heart. I
Yes.
really now I follow more Zig Ziglar's son because Zig isn't around
Right.
anymore. But it's a giver's gain. It's what BNI has structured their whole thing about. But it's true because when you go to a networking event, it's what you can do for somebody else, not what they can do for you. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, I'm happy you threw that in. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's gold level thinking in my world. But that was one key because they'd show up and they don't have anybody to talk to, so they wander over to talk to you, and you then start on a journey with them. And my approach was like this, and I teach my young people here in my law practice this approach. If you're talking to someone in networking or just talking to someone in a cocktail type situation, your job is to focus on that person and never mind what else is going on in the room. Never mind if President Trump just is walking by behind the person you're talking to, or any football star or baseball star or whatever. It's important to train yourself on the person you're talking to. Everything else is irrelevant. That's the whole idea here. It's inconsiderate to use another person you're dealing with to, so you see these guys, they're talking to you, but they watch as someone goes by.
Right,
You know
right.
how you feel when that happens.
Absolutely. It's called active listening.
Yeah,
So you listen to the person who you're with, you give them 100% of your attention,
yeah.
and here's the funny part about active listening. It's after they finish speaking, you pause, and that's such an important pause because it gives you time to digest what they said. It gives them time to say, he was listening to me, and then you respond to him with something that he spoke about. So you don't want to talk about something that you have on your agenda because that really doesn't matter. You want to respond to something that he was talking about because it shows that you were paying 100% attention. So that
Absolutely.
active listening, yes.
Very insightful.
I have a lot of these.
Good, good.
Okay, let me go to the second question.
Sure.
What unique challenges do immigrants face when building professional connections, and how can they overcome it or overcome them?
A big challenge is cultural. You're coming into a new society, obviously a society different than the one you're used to. And a big deal about that is language, learning the language of the new society. Now, in my life, like I speak a few languages. I'm Ukrainian in background, so I learned Ukrainian growing up and stuff like that. And I've been able to pick up a little bit on the Slavic element. But I've also studied Spanish and French, and it's been hard, a hard goal. And so I'm thinking from the point of view of someone new who's trying to learn English, what can I do to offer them some help in picking up the language? And one of the big things that I learned in studying other languages was about cognates. I don't know if you know the word cognate. I didn't know the word when I first heard it. And it's words that are the same in other languages. So, for example, transportation, the word transportation or communication in French or in Spanish, transportation in Ukrainian, they're all the same. It's a cognate for it's because languages are a mixture of various languages. Over time, they're influenced by each other. Communication, transportation, all words, pretty much all words ending in tion are such cognates. And other words, and I can't give you examples because I wasn't expecting to talk on this exact topic right now, but I looked it up. And as much as perhaps 30 or 40% of a new language for you may consist of words you already know because they're cognates. And if you go through a dictionary, you can pick up those cognates. And it's astounding that you may know 30 or 40% of a language even before you started. What a gift, what a boost that is.
What a great thing. And yeah, it's for you just because I know two languages, English and bad English. That's my two languages.
Yeah.
I took Spanish in school and I can understand somewhat, but that's very interesting that those but cognates you were talking.
Cognates. That's
Yeah,
that's the word for
yeah,
it. And
very interesting.
yeah. Now, in picking up languages, other things, and now why am I focused on language? Because I would say language is the critical element to integrate into a new community. And if you don't focus on it and get it down hard, you're going to be behind in terms of getting ahead in that language, in that community.
A lot of my clients, they English is a second language. And the first thing that I go over with them is that they have to enunciate their words because they're either saying them too fast or they're putting the words together.
Right.
So when I help them with their diction, when they're enunciating, it slows them down and people can actually understand them that much better.
Yeah.
So it all has to do with the language.
Good tip. Now, there's a lot we could talk about language. For example, I just share a little insight from my uncle who's passed away, but during World War II, he was a translator. He knew 13 languages,
Oh,
but he didn't know English. And when the war ended, he was in Vienna and he thought, gee, the American zone, I got to learn English. And what he did is he bought a German English dictionary. He knew German. And he had a photographic memory. So he read the whole dictionary. And then what he did is he listened to Allied radio army broadcasts on the hour of the news. And they repeated the news every hour on the hour. And he read newspapers and underlined words he didn't understand, looked them up in the dictionary, and kept just word by word, sentence by sentence, sound by sound. He picked up English within, he said something like 6 months. And he reported to the general, to the chief general, in American general. He comes up to him, somehow he got in there, and he says, I'm reporting for duty. And the general says, duty? What kind of duty? What kind? He says, translator. I don't need a translator. What languages do you speak? He said, what language do you want? He spoke 13 of them. The American general goes, Russian, French, or whatever it was through 13. Goes, okay, report over to so-and-so.
You're hired. That's
Oh,
great.
foreign
That's
languages.
great.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's go on to another question.
sure.
Can you share a story where networking directly impacted an opportunity or breakthrough in your career?
That's a tough one for me, but I've already mentioned it. I became chairman of the Beverly Hills Bar Association networking committee because I used the skills we talked about earlier to rise to that level. And that opened the door to me to a whole community of lawyers, at least, who wanted to get to know me because of my position. And so it made it easy for me to, as an immigrant, as we were talking earlier, integrate into that community. And through that community, I was able to reach out to other communities and become involved, entrenched in other. I was in the Century City area of Hollywood, which is where they used to meet. And I got to know a lot of people in that area. I used to go, there's nothing like attending meetings to get to know people. And if you have networking skills, you're automatically, it's like they had a thing called speed dating networking
Sure.
stuff. I
Sure.
don't know if
I
you've
know
had.
it.
Oh,
Oh,
you do?
sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. I know it all too well.
Okay. We had those sessions where you had whatever 3 or 5 minutes with someone, and then each telling each other what you do, and then go on to the next chair and talk to another person and so on. And over time, you develop a nice string of people that are friendly and start socializing and so on. So it helped me break into American society. And what society? The Beverly Hills Bar Association and Hollywood and Century City, which was really valuable to me.
Which was, I'm sure, which was great. And the fact that you were trying to integrate yourself with with everybody else, it was
Yeah,
just an easier way. And by you knowing all of what you know, networking wise and communication wise,
yeah,
made it that much easier. Okay.
absolutely.
So, how do you stay motivated to keep building and nurturing your network, especially through tough transactions or setbacks?
Okay. Here we're touching on a key area of focus, and it's what I call your unique ability. And I'll share it with you in this way. There's a good story that kind of focuses on the area. It's the story of Karl Wallenda, who was one of the world's leading tightrope walkers.
I
And
know of him well.
okay. So you may probably know that he tried to walk a tightrope between two high rises in San Juan, Puerto Rico, I think in the 1980s, and fell to his death. Fell to his death. But before he died, he was interviewed by reporters, and they asked him, why do you walk the tightrope? Why do you take such risks with your life? And he answered this in this way. He said, I live my life on the tightrope. That's when I really live. And everything before is a mere prelude to, and everything after is a postscript following my life on the tightrope. And that's now what he was saying is, it's so important to me. I'm willing to even risk death to do this. And from reading about other people, for example, Elvis Presley, he felt really alive only on the stage when he performed in front of audiences. There's a tennis player, I think his name was Roger Ashe, who used to talk about flow, that there was a state that he would get into, and all these sports personalities, they all talk about flow, where they're just in a moment when everything else doesn't matter. They're just in their unique abilities, what I call unique ability. So the key is, what is your unique ability? And if you can find it, can you find activity and work in that area? And the reason why that's so significant is because if you're working in your area of unique ability, you're at your best. It's where your passion is. You're giving the world the best you have. And the world senses that, and it responds to you. Now, a good story about that is if you look over my shoulder, you'll see a tab up there. It's from Toastmasters, some organization you probably know a lot about.
Sure do.
So I was in Toastmasters for 35 years,
Yeah.
and I attended club meetings for 35 years, weekly club meetings where we practiced public speaking and leadership skills for 35 years. And I thought this is my unique ability. This is where I am, the best. But the world didn't want me there. No, they said, Andy, you don't belong there. The world said, we want you to write articles, journal, books. And so the world guided me to where I needed to be. It helped me find my unique ability. Now, my unique ability, I believe, is in the area of communication, so verbal and written. But it's just an indication of how you get to your unique ability.
Absolutely. Very good. Very well said, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay. What communication strategies have proven most effective for you when connecting with people from diverse backgrounds?
Okay. I'm a big believer in stories, sharing stories, especially, for example, with people who are disadvantaged or young people, especially childhood memories, for example. We are all vulnerable to strong stories. I'm just reminded of an event that just took place last night where I was at a funeral celebration. And I talked about, I shared this story. There's this group of people called Lemkos who live in the mountains in western Ukraine, in the Carpathian Mountains. And they had a belief, and the belief was that when a person is born, a star appears in the sky. And when they pass on, when they cross the footstep into eternity, the star disappears from the sky. And that's just a little example of a story that's captivating. It goes deep. There's a symbolic part to it, and there's something about the human experience in that story that makes it compelling.
Where I'm concerned, at least for public speaking, corporate speaking, workshops, stories, people tend to remember stories. If I told them what to do out of a textbook, 1 through 10, and I told them a story with the same information, they'll remember 80% of it more through the story than if I just gave them the text. So stories sell.
Not only that, there's one other aspect of this. I'm a big believer in humor. I think comedy goes a long way.
That's me. Okay.
Especially when you're trying to connect with an audience. The connection, an emotional connection through humor, if you can pass on some humor, maybe I can give you an example. Say, for example, this lady buys a parrot and she brings him home and she thinks, I'm going to teach this parrot how to talk. I wonder, what could I teach him? And she's got people coming in and out of her house. So she figures, when they knock on the door, I'll have the parrot say, who is it? So she taught the parrot to say, who is it? So now the parrot knows how to say, who is it? And she goes shopping one day and leaves the parrot back home. And someone comes to the door, a guy knocks on the door. Parrot says, who is it? The guy answers, it's the plumber. And the parrot says, who is it? And the guy says, it's the plumber. Parrot says, who is it? And the guy says, it's the plumber. And the guy gets so exasperated, he faints and falls down on the steps. So, meanwhile, the woman comes home and she opens the door and she sees this plumber, this guy lying on the ground. And she says, oh my goodness, I wonder, who is it? And the parrot says, it's the plumber.
Plumber.
There's a joke.
Yeah.
A joke like that can break the ice when you're trying to
Yeah,
with another person.
I always inject humor into every presentation that I give. And it usually just, I use it more to have them pay attention to what I'm saying as opposed to breaking up, because usually I have a good connection with the audience. But when I throw humor in there, it's always just that much more. They connect with you that much more. Oh, okay. So, how can professionals ensure their networking is mutually beneficial rather than transactional?
I guess the key answer there, from my point of view, is what's in your head? Why are you connecting with someone? And I'll tell a little story about that that will make the point. I had a close friend. His name was John Kolaski in Canada. And he was a unique individual because for 30 years, he was a member of the Communist Party of Canada and was a devout communist. And then one day in the 1970s, he was invited to the Soviet Union to the upper higher party school. And he went there for 2 years. And when he was there, he realized, oh, this is all garbage. I've been living a life of garbage for 30 years. And he came back. It was a traumatic experience for him. But he came back and he reconciled himself with democracy and a more liberal kind of a point of view. One day, I'm in the library studying at UBC in Vancouver, and he was in Vancouver also. He was an author, he wrote books, and I saw him coming. And I look up and I see him coming, and I think, I'm in for a workout here, because he'd always lecture me. And he says to me, Andy, and I'm thinking, oh, how am I going to answer this question? He says, does the end justify the means? And I'm thinking, I don't know the answer. Yes. He says, no, Andy, because every means, especially with people, is an end to itself. Never use people for another end. You can work with people, and if they consent to work with you, work with them to achieve another end, but never consider people a means to an end you have. And I think that's the key to when you're talking, communicating with people, the way to deal with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also feel that when you're beginning that communication, you're looking to bring value to the conversation. You're looking to bring value because if I instead of it being transactional, before the pandemic, everything was transactional. After the pandemic, we become more relationship oriented. And if I'm reaching out to you, I'm not going to reach out to you and say, oh, by the way, I have 3 widgets for $1. Would you like to buy them?
Yeah.
I'm reaching out to you and I may cut an article out and say, I saw this article, would you be interested? So on and so forth. So I try to bring value to the conversation 3, 4, 5 times, and then I'll slowly hit you with my services. So that's a different way.
Great.
How can professionals ensure their networking is mute? Wait a second. I just asked you that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there specific tools or platforms that immigrants or newcomers should leverage to accelerate their integration into new professional communities?
Well, I mentioned Toastmasters. I
Yes.
think that's an excellent organization to join to practice your speaking skills and learn leadership skills.
I was a
And
member for a while.
yeah, there you go. And if you get good enough, you could join the National Speakers Association. So, for example, I see
I'm a
you're a
member.
speaker. Oh, you are?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's definitely a place to hang out from your point of view if you're working in your area. Professional associations are also very handy. In my area, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, for example, is an organization I belong to. I think you got to do things like that. All the service clubs like Rotary, Kiwanis, Optimists, and so on. I think they're great places to belong and to find meaningful activities, share experiences with the members. I've attended many Rotary meetings and so on, and I got a lot of value from Rotary. So those would be some of the areas that I would recommend. Of course, going to school and college and so on never hurts, and the more skills you can learn, the better.
Yeah, I've spoken to a great many Rotaries, Lions clubs, things like that, business associations, because I feel that they get the most out of what I have to say about networking, communication, everything else. Everything for me, networking is the baseline for every business, and you
Yeah.
work up from there. Okay, so what advice would you give to someone who feels intimidated or unsure about reaching out to established professionals?
I know in my case, I welcome if someone reaches out and asks, hey, listen, I'm having a hardship. Would you be willing to spend a little time with me to see how I can get over this hardship, or how can I become a lawyer, or what am I missing, or whatever, as an immigrant? I think most people, especially accomplished people who are not egocentric, but, and I think most people, a lot of people see the world as something bigger than just themselves. And such people are more than willing, if you just reach out and ask for guidance or to consult with them. So I would recommend that, no matter how high up you think they are in the world and how low you feel. But here's a little tip that I got from a friend of mine, Wally Patrician, who was a lawyer. He's passed on now, but he shared this tip with me, which is when he was practicing law and he didn't know what to do, and it got into an area, had no idea what to do about. He looked up in the directory who are some of the top lawyers, attorneys in the field. He would call up the office and he'd book an appointment for a consultation and pay $400-500 more, $1,000 for an hour. And he'd go and see them and say, look, I'm a young lawyer. I'm just starting. I need to learn how to do mergers and acquisitions. You're the star in the area. Can you share with me what I need to know so that I can learn this field? And they would open up to him and help him enormously, way over the whatever amount he paid. But it was a very clever way to do networking,
Yeah,
because money's hard. People don't want to give money up.
so that's always the most difficult thing. I know about when I first started speaking, I reached out to a very well-known, highly respected speaker within the country. Everybody's always trying to get him and everything else. I reached out to him through LinkedIn, through an email, and let's look, I'm going to give it a shot. If he answers me, that's wonderful. If not, I understand. And I reached out to him. I asked him two questions. And I think within an hour, he responded through his cell phone, but he responded. And I was like, little old me, he reached out to me. But yeah, because every time they're at, it's not a big ask. They're willing to help you and extend their, I'll say their greatness, but it's amazing. All you have to do is ask. Never be afraid to ask.
Yeah,
Okay, so how do you measure the profitability of a connection? What makes a networking relationship truly valuable?
I'll tell you from my practice, and I've been practicing for many decades, I learned that when I focus on the money, nothing seems to go right. When I focus on the person and the problem, the money takes care of itself. In fact, it's even better if I do that than if I focus on the money. I'll make more money focusing on the person and the problem. And so now I know there's a school of thought, how much should I earn this year? Set a target and work towards it. I don't know. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. It's probably helpful. But in my own experience, the way I got ahead in life and the friendships and the colleagues that I made in my life, I made most of my advances and what I am thankful for because of the focus on the idea, the ideals, the person, the connection to the person, and provide, like you said earlier, providing value in relationships. That's where I found the most reward came from. And not every reward is economic. Look, I had clients who'd come in and they couldn't afford to pay me. They're immigrants. So they bring me a jar of pickled pickles or a dead chicken for dinner. I bring it home to my wife. She'd say, "What are we going to do with this?" Eat it,
Right.
cook it and eat it. There's all kinds of stuff like that, but that's memorable.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm known in this area as being a connector.
Mm.
I see two people that are in need of each other's services and they did not know of one another. I'm going to introduce them and then back away. I'm going to say, Andy, this is Michael. Michael, this is Andy. This is what Michael does. This is what Andy does. I think you can use one another. Have at it. And I step away and I let them. Now, they usually include me on their email chains so I
Yeah.
know what's going on, but it's not necessary. And I
Yeah.
try to do that once a week. So I've been doing it for 2 years now.
Oh, wow.
So every week I put two people together and whatever comes out of it, it comes out. And that way that I feel I've done something.
Yeah. Yeah. Good work.
Okay, now let's bring this podcast full circle. For women and minorities navigating new environments, what empowering mindset or habit has helped you overcome barriers to build an authentic relationship?
Okay. I'm going to talk about motivation here. And this is a topic dear to me. And it's dear to me because I learned about it from one of the great speakers in Toastmasters. Many years ago, when I was in Toastmasters, I came up with an idea. I learned that Toastmasters each year had what they called a golden gavel speaker that would come to their convention and give them a talk about their life. And they would award him the gold or her the golden gavel for the year. So I wrote to Toastmasters magazine and I said to them, "Hey, listen, I'm a Toastmaster. I would be interested in hearing these golden gavel recordings and writing about them for Toastmasters magazines." And they sent me a whole bunch, a collection of these speeches. And among the speeches, there was a guy who won the golden gavel way back, probably about 40 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, whatever. And he talked about motivation. And I was really impressed. I really took it to heart. And he talked this way. His name was Bob Richards, a Golden Gavel winner. And he said, in the course of this talk, he said, when I was a small kid, I lived in a town and we had a baseball team. And the best baseball player on the team was a guy named Lou Boudreau. And everybody, all the kids like me when I was a kid, and this is Bob Richards talking, admired Lou Boudreau. The sun set, rose and set on Lou Boudreau. And one day, Richards went to the baseball field and was in the stadium, in the far end of the stadium, when Lou Boudreau hit a home run. And Richards caught the home run. And he was just ecstatic. He ran to the players' change area, waiting for the players to come out so he could get the autograph of Lou Boudreau on the baseball. And he was standing there. Lou Boudreau came out and he was going down the line and he came to Richards. He says to Richards, "And what's your name?" And Richards said, Bobby Richards. And Lou says to Bobby, "Oh, and what are you going to be when you grow up?" And Richards, I think he said, "I'm going to be a great baseball player." And Boudreau said, Oh, that's great, Bobby. I can see it. One day you're going to be great, really great. And he took the ball and he signed Luke Woodrow. And Richards, in this speech, said, you can't imagine how motivating it was to hear some encouragement from a person like him who was so big in my life, such an idol for me in my life. And then he went on to talk a little bit more about motivation, and this is what he said. Back then, when he was speaking, America was in the skids, economically in trouble. And a newspaper decided to canvass some of the leading economists in America, asking, what does America need right at this moment to get out of the economic malaise? And 3 economists all answered the same thing. They said, what's needed is motivation. And then Richards said, this is how I define motivation. It says, motivation is painting a picture of the life of the person you're dealing with that's bigger than the image that he or she has for themselves at that moment. And the moment of motivation is when that person clutches onto that bigger image for themselves and adopts it in their life. And I thought, wow, that to me explains everything.
Yes, it does. Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Andy, I got to tell you, I'm out of questions, but I can probably talk to you for another 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But time is limiting. If anybody wanted to get hold of you for a discussion, for some consulting, to hire you, whatever the case may be, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Okay, I work with a group called Pace Law Firm, PACE Law Firm, and our website is pacelawfirm.com. So you can just go to the website and you'll find my name and you can get all my contact information, anything about my books or what I'm doing there. That would be the best way.
Great. Andy, thank you so much. You were so insightful. And with the stories and everything else, I can't thank you enough for coming on my podcast.
I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you, Michael.
Well, hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let's hear from our sponsors. David Neal, co-founder, Revved Up Kids. Revved Up Kids is on a mission to protect children and teens from sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. They provide prevention training programs for children, teens, and adults. To learn more, go to revvedupkids.org. Henry Kaplan, Century 21. When it comes to making the biggest financial decision of your life, leave it in the hands of a proven professional, Henry Kaplan. Henry is a global real estate agent with Century 21, celebrating his 41st year in business. No matter where you're moving, Henry has the right connections for you. You can contact Henry at 561 427 4888. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. If you're interested in my digital courses, being coached, or having me come and talk to your company, just go to Michael and fill out the request form. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, or my website, forman.com/podcasts.